Hello, everyone, and welcome to the second session of Beyond the Meeting presented by Meeting Insights. Here we talk about the importance of capturing, saving, and sharing the knowledge shared during your company meetings. In this session, we'll be talking about why you should record and keep your company meetings. Today, I'm joined by Yariv Milber, Director of Business Development. Hey, how are you?
I'm fine, thanks, Josh.
Good to see you. Yariv, maybe you can tell us a little bit more about you and some of the work that you do.
Yes, as you can see in my title, okay, I'm a business development guy. I'm responsible to talking to customers, conveying messages of my company, AudioCodes, to the customers, a lot of customer meetings. And aside of obviously promoting recording with other products, I also a user of system by myself because I have a lot of internal meeting and also customer meeting during the week.
All right, thanks, Yariv. So I wanted to dive into the first question here and get us started. And the first question is around what type of meetings do you record and how do you use the content afterwards?
Obviously, me as being, with a leg outside my organization, meeting customer, and another leg inside the organization, advocating my interests of my customers, meeting with product manager and upper management, including the CEO. Obviously, I really like to record the meeting with the customers, obviously getting their approval for that. They're also benefiting because first and foremost, they can get the content afterwards, consume the content afterwards by themselves. I'm throwing a lot of demos. I'm promoting a lot of complex products to customers, and sometimes it's very difficult to grasp the entire content of what I'm trying to push and squeeze. We as salespeople always have only just 30 minutes or 60 minutes to have the unique value proposition, including demo and everything, and you try to squeeze everything that you can inside the session. And sometimes you throw at the customer so much information, it's difficult for them to consume in real time, live. So actually providing them a link with recording where they can listen carefully later on in their own time and consume the content, such a great benefit for my customers and for myself, because actually it's a great sales tool. It's like having a second chance to have the second demo without me actually promoting. So that's number one with the outside world. In the inside world of my organization is one day, that go internally now and try to promote the interest of my customer inside my organization. I have a lot of meetings with product manager, project manager, my CEO, my upper management, and sometimes it's really difficult for me to catch up about other conversations that are happening during the session because, as you know, you always try to do during the sessions. Sometimes you don't have the 100%, meaning, everyone knows this tool that we have, and, during the meeting you can be on the phone. So the ability that when it's not interest so much to do the phones and later on even have the ability to second hear what they've been doing, talking about while I was on the phone, that's option number one. Number two, it's also sometimes I found out that when I look the meeting that I had with my colleagues afterwards, I see a lot of nuance that I didn't catch up during the session. And obviously all the archiving and all the minutes of meeting that I don't need to do it anymore. I have the system. If I need to roll back to a certain point, I can do it. So that's a great benefit.
I like that you mentioned, a use case for recording both externally when you're talking with a customer, someone who doesn't know the product or know the business that you work for really well, and then be able to provide them with a recording as well as the slides and everything for them to digest on their own time, as well as internally. You think about all the meetings that you have internally with product and sales and customer success and upper management. Everyone else is having a lot of meetings too. So in order to maybe go back and digest that information on your own time within, say, like a couple of minutes, it could be useful in kind of catching up on your day, or say you're out on vacation and you come back and listen to some of the meetings that you missed to be able to catch up on your projects and where things stand. All right, Yariv. So second question here for you. How can saving meeting recordings provide valuable insights into the decision-making processes for company leadership?
Just so, upper management like CEO, C-levels, and other manager of big departments, they have a lot of employees underneath them that do a lot of meetings that sometimes they're aware about the topics on the meeting. Sometimes there are what we call under under the ground meetings that are not aware. The beauty is that as a manager, it's not that you need to listen. Manager don't have time to listen to recordings of his subordinate meeting. That's not the purpose. That's not the real value. The value is that, for example, if imagine that whatever as a meeting happened, it's being preserved in the repository and also transcribed, so you can know what are the main topics that are being discussed during the meetings, and not what is the subject. For example, I know if a certain account was mentioned during 10 different meetings under my organization, because there is like a key spotlight of certain keywords, and you can see how many times this specific keyword was mentioned during the session. This gives you the idea how big is a buzz around a specific idea within your department, or topic, or an account. Okay, so main discussion points and what subjects are being discussed in the organization, it gives the manager the ability to understand what is the buzz all about in the organization. By the way, if they are pushing for a certain implementation of a certain initiative, and this initiative even has a name, you can know how many times this name was mentioned during the session. It gives you the actual idea about how this was embraced within your organization. Okay, that's number one. Number two, obviously, if you have a system that can tag ideas, or can tag action items, or can tag a decision, you don't have to listen the entire sessions of your subordinates, or people that are working underneath you. You can see exactly just by, in one screen, you can see in the last week all the action item that is being taken, or all the decision that is being taken, or what are the most trending 10 topics that is being discussed in the all 100 and 120 meetings. In my organization, as an average, I know that we have roughly every week, roughly 140 meetings. Okay, so imagine that we can know exactly what are the 10 most discussed points in these 140 meetings. So that's for decision-making process, and for manager and leadership, that's a crucial insight about what really happened in meetings without it being a meeting, and without needing to listen to the full recording of the meeting.
Awesome, Riv. That was some great insight on specifically how you use a meeting recording, especially from a decision-making process. For the next question, I was curious, can preserving meeting recordings improve transparency across your organization? If so, how could that happen?
Let's talk about, transparency, okay, and what's the benefit? Okay, obviously having transparency allows for people to accommodate themselves easier to the values of the organization. It allows them to understand better the organization, take decisions in a smarter way, in an easier way. Now, in order to achieve that, this transparency, and by the way, it's not just about content of the organization. It exists also in your social networking, in your Facebook, in LinkedIn, in Instagram, everywhere. The ability of having, in emails, everyone today in emails download these like filters, like they can have it on their inbox. Sometimes you download like extension like X1 that allows you to easily sort and find quickly what happened in your emails. I don't understand why people do not do that for meetings. Okay, the ability to quickly search, find, and consume a topic that was recorded as part of the meeting, doesn't have to be an entire meeting, by the way. It could be just the 1 minute that we talk about this specific subject. The ability to have like a company repository where you can easily, obviously, what is allowed to search. Obviously, there are meetings that certain employee will not be exposed because they're not allowed. I'm talking about what is let's say, the public domain content of the organization. The ability to quickly just search by keywords, find exactly what are the main topics that interest you to consume, and consume it by just clicking and getting this 1 minute, 2 minute discussion. That's the most important for transparency. It needs to be easily searched, easily find, and fast to consume. And by doing so, you allow your employees within the organization, first and foremost, to have access to the content and enrich themselves, but also you understand when organization embrace this kind of philosophy, it also gives something to the employees that is in a place with values. Okay, as I said, transparency is always one of the greatest values that you can have in the organization.
Being able to see specific keywords within a meeting, going in and being able to search them and find them easily, providing transparency across organization feels like it kind of flattens the organization where, if there is a meeting within a public domain that it's accessible across the organization, I myself, as a marketing manager, could go in and listen to a public call that sits within, the VP level of the product or the VP level of customer success. And I can go in and search on terms, maybe I have initiative around, say, sales enablement or something like that. Being able to see and search by a term related to sales enablement or a specific topic within there. And I can go in and digest that information and use it to better my work in the future as well. That definitely, from a transparency way, if you don't have that access to that recording, then I would have never known that. Besides going in and asking someone for that information.
Yep, I fully agree.
So we talked a little bit about transparency and being able to have meetings recorded and the importance of that. How would a company effectively archive and retrieve meeting recordings for future reference?
Okay, so actually this answer comes from two parts. One is the archive, and the second, I call it proper tags, and I'm going to explain, okay? Because we mentioned in the previous question about, easy to find. How I make sure not just that archiving, I make it easy for people to find. So number one, about the actual archiving, you have two options. When you have sessions, you have two options to archive them. One is I'm on a session, and suddenly I either was not aware that it's possible to have recording, or I didn't plan to have it record, and I wanted to record right now. Okay, so this is very important to have the ability to just by a click of a button or by a summon of a bot to make sure that this call start to be recording. That's number one. But I actually believe more in what we call the opt-in. Okay, opt-in mode is where you go to the system. For example, if you are dealing with the organization, what meetings, regardless of what is the topic, you want to record. For example, a quarterly business review of accounts, that's something that you can easily record. Project status, for example, it's something they really would like to record. Training for new employees onboarding, that's something that for sure even before starting the session that you want to record. Webinars, events by nature, everyone today records them, but if you do it online today and you have this system, immediately if you flag this meeting that you are summoning as a webinar, it can be recorded automatically. So I believe that you need to have a certain rules in place where you define to the organization that these and these types of meetings will be automatically recording without asking anyone, because it's agreed across the board in the organization that these kind of meetings should be automatically recorded. That's what I call the opt-in. The only thing that left is for the other, what we call on-demand meeting, where you want the recording on demand so you can start it. So that's about the archiving. Now let's talk about the finding now, because, okay, we have all the meetings that we want in this huge repository. How I'm making sure that people like us, that when we want to go and access and see if there is a topic that's being discussed in my organization, how I'm making sure that they can find it. So obviously, we talk about keywords or keyword spotlights, but you need to have a tool in place that people will say. For example, there are people may use different terminology to the same subject. So what we actually recommend, I recommend, is that when you have the session, when the session is over, you should have the ability to add like tags to the meeting. Okay, for example, we talk about this session right now. For example, this session that we are doing is a Q&A. One of the tags that I will put for this specific recording would be a Q&A. So anyone that is looking for a meeting that was a Q&A about meeting recording, they will see, because we're going to have the tag of meeting recording, we're going to have the tag of Q&A. So if someone now going to search, I want to see Q&A about meeting recording, this session that we are currently recording will pop up. So proper archiving means proper tag and usage of tags in order for other people to find it. And I recommend to have, different, for example, naming conversion. There are a lot of events or meetings that everyone call them differently, but you can put in tags the different names. So no matter what tag they are typing in, they will find the proper meeting. Okay, so that's about the ease of finding, meaning, again, using opt-in for recording and populating with proper tags the recording that you do. So it's going to be easy for people to find it.
Yeah, it can be great to have a meeting recording tool, but if it's not maybe implemented universally to be used the same way by everyone, then you just have, a repository with a bunch of recordings with no naming convention, where there'd be hard to find any information. Yeah. So then you have, just another repository of information where people can get maybe a little overwhelmed with everything that's in there when it's not organized well. So having something that can maybe be organized really well with good titles and definitions of, say, this meeting recording has slides, or this meeting recording has a decision that's been made, or action items that have been put together, and then seeing who is also in that, say, meeting recording. You can go in and find all that information, maybe in one place.
Yeah, it's very, again, it's great tool to have repository, but when you finish the recording, and there is always, in every organization, there is what we call a content manager. The content manager needs to make sure that every piece of content that you've got have the proper tags for indexing. It same goes in, in SEO, in Google and other search engines. You need your proper, even for the content that you record in this system that you choose to have, you need to have proper SEO, not for Google, proper SEO for your organization. So people will get what they're looking for.
Yeah, a good search bar that, when I type in Yariv, I can find
proper tagging,
everything you're talking about.
yeah, proper tagging. That's a must, because it's not just about storing it, it's about making sure that it's easy to access and easy to find. SEO, search engine optimization, with regards to this specific solution, it's also, we achieve that by using tags, and it's something that is very common.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and with that, you have the benefit of, I know we talked about this a little bit before, but finding everything in one place rather than, me having to go and email you about sending a recording to me, or clicking the share button and sending it to me. Being part of the organization together, we already have access to that. If it's a public meeting, obviously, if you have a private meeting that you don't want.
You actually raise a good point there that I didn't thought about. You raised the point, so I must answer now.
Yeah, go ahead.
It's about the whole concept of the solution, because people ask me, Yariv, there are UCs, the different unified communication solution. Everyone got this record button. What's the difference? Okay, I'm getting to that point. And the typical standard generic unified communication systems, such as Zoom and Teams, that have the recording, they are user-oriented recordings, meaning that the owner is the user. If someone else in the organization wants the content that is being consumed by the user, he needs to use the terminology that the user used. He needs to have the authorization from the user to access, and so forth, because these solutions are user-oriented solutions. However, the topic solution that we are talking right now, that may find also in several vendors, it's more about organization. Instead of shifting the weights from user-generated and owning the content, yes, it's user-generated content, but the owner of the content is the organization. So we want to move the responsibility of archiving and also accessing from the user to the organization. And that's very, very important with the whole designing of the solution. This is an organization-oriented solution and not a user-oriented solution. So that's tied back to the point that you raised, that we have an organizational repository that everyone have access. If you're still keeping your traditional UC solution where it's user-based, it's going to be very, very challenging for other users to consume the content that was stored by one user. That's why we are moving and see more and more organizations shifting towards organization-based repository where the design is all about the content that is owned by the organization and not just the user. Sorry for barging in.
No, that was great. How can preserving meeting recordings be used to elevate the performance and effectiveness of a team or a company?
When we say record a meeting, people always thinks about, we save what we see on screen and we save what everyone is saying. But it's not about that. When we talk about meeting recording, if you look at the meeting, there are several components. This is the presentation. There are what people said, and then there are some actionable stuff that happened during the meeting, such as you may dictate a meeting summary. You may dictate or take decisions like action items. You can say take a strategic decision organization-wise. Each one of them is going to be tagged differently. For example, you're going to have, when you record a session, you're going to have the tagging with all the action items. You're going to have another chapter with all the decision strategic points and so forth. Now, if we talk about how we can, evaluate performance, I will quote one of the CEOs that I know and believe that everyone here in the organization knows. It says, if you have a meeting without action, without any actions, okay, action items, the meeting was not worthwhile. I don't know why, but this is his philosophy, okay? So from his perspective, if he wants to look about performance, he would be looking how many meetings there actually was action items, how many meetings this group of people had without any action item. That's for him, because he decided that his performance parameter would be action items. He can track and see exactly on which, or in the organization, which meeting had more action item, which one didn't have any action items, on which topics raised most of the action item, and so forth. It depends on what parameter you, for yourself or for your organization, decide that you will judge the effectiveness, okay? It was just an example, the action items, but this is just an example. It could be also based on decision, who is the owner and what is the deadline, or if not, more appropriate will be to have certain API to other systems that are productivity tools, such as Monday, for example, that you can have during the session, you can talk about a certain action item, and immediately once the session is over, it will be cut and parsed and shoved and pushed immediately to Monday for you to control it there. So I think this is one of the most effective way of doing that. But then again, it's subjective. When you say how you evaluate performance of such a solution, it's subjective to what parameter you decide that it would be your performance criteria.
All right, so we're coming into our last question here. So Yuriv, in what ways can technology be utilized to automate the preservation and retrieval of meeting recordings?
Okay, so we're talking about meeting recording. There are two phases, okay? Number one is the recording, and the other thing is the consumption of the content itself. So if we talk about the recording, how we can automate the recording, I mentioned it before, but I would like to repeat it because it's very important, is that you should have a system that allows you to have a certain rule base where you just go, you define the rules on which situation, which meeting should be recording automatically, and that's it. You don't touch it again. The system will start to will start to record automatically and store automatically for you also all the meetings. So from the recording perspective, I think a rule-based solution where you can automatically decide which type of meetings will be recorded, and whenever someone flags this meeting as the same type, it will automatically report. This kind of automation can help a lot in the part of doing it, auto-processing of the recording. But that's the least important part. The more important part, as I see it, is about consumption. Content do not hold any value if it's not being consumed. I always say that. So Doing recording for the sake of recording doesn't give you any benefit. The benefit is in the actually second part, how I can automate the consumption of the content that I hold, how I can push and let's say internally promote the content that is being just preserved. Now, imagine a place where actually I, Yariv, can put in the system all the keywords that represents the topic that interests me. I'm a business development, I'm dealing with customer. So for me, I will be very interested in, I probably have around 20 to 30 names of accounts that if anyone mentioned this name of account, I will be interested in listening, for example. Or another thing, I'm responsible also for promoting in my organization and the sales team, we're called screening security solutions. So if someone in my meeting or with the customer or internally talks about security solutions in voice, I want to know, and I want to know in one perspective if it was mentioned. So what will be beneficial to me, to Yariv Milberg, would be if I go to this, imagine that I can go to the system and say, I want to have a push feed on highlights, the 2 minutes that was mentioned, on all these accounts and all these topics, and imagine that no matter who talks about it, the moment that, obviously if I'm allowed, okay, that is not a discrete session, but if I have the privilege to see it, if we, for example, someone at the meeting and they talked about a new idea that they have in the security domain of VoIP, I would like to get like an RSS feed push where I just need to click and I can jump immediately to the 1 minute discussion about the topic. Even though that I was not even part of the discussion. Imagine it's like me now, being on top of the subject that important to me and counts that important to me in the organization without me being part of the meetings, even without knowing that someone discussed it. So this is, if we go back to one of the original question about transparency and knowledge transfer, that's a great tool, okay? Having users register to certain tags that whenever this tag was triggered because this subject was mentioned, he can get a push of 1 minute of a clip, or actually you click on the link and you go directly to the section of the meeting where people talk about the subject that you are interested in. That's really, really going to help in me getting and consume more content that actually appeal to me, that interests me. It's a great tool. So that's about this is what I call highlights how to push based on keywords. That's really, really going to help for me to be aware of this subject, but also to the organization to make the benefits and reap the fruits of this knowledge repository that I have, this meeting recording repository that I have.
Yeah, I think something like that could really show the value of the topic that we're talking about today, why preserving your organization's meetings is just as important as preserving your emails. An organization typically keeps their emails for many years in their server, and most organizations are not doing the same for the meetings that they have on a weekly basis. You mentioned how many meetings AudioCodes has on a weekly basis, 140. And if across the company, if 1,000 employees, so if you just think about all the information that's being passed during those conversations, and to not keep that information and preserve it for future usage, all the ideas that come up and all the action items that are taken, and all of the random thoughts that are interjected in a conversation that are never kept.
Yeah,
Go
but
ahead.
I'm talking something, yes, I agree with you, but I'm talking about transferring from being passive to proactive, meaning imagine this repository that just wait for someone to search something. If instead of this repository to be waiting for someone to gonna be consume or look for these specific topics, imagine that the repository already know what Joss is interested in. This repository already know what Yariv wants to consume from content because I gave him the tags. I told him the accounts. I told him he can push it proactively to me without me needing to go and search. Imagine me sitting 12 o'clock at night. There is another time zone, another meeting that just has been recorded and preserved and handed. And I just get an email saying, hey, Yariv, here is a link to a meeting that just has been held in another time zone of your organization on the subject that you are subscribed to as a tag. Go ahead, consume it. That's a proactive approach for pushing the content to the appropriate point of interest or person of interest in the organization proactively. It's a simple rule-based. And this is something that will help also with knowledge transfer and transparency very easily. And I think it's crucial. I really don't see many, almost at all, I don't see organizations that proactively push the content to the user. Why? It's been in our private life. This is what Instagram with hashtags are doing. If you subscribe to an hashtag, you get a push on a post that, I don't know, my wife just posted because I just subscribed to her hashtag or whatever. Why not use it here? Why not having hashtags on your recordings or topics that are important to you? When someone uses the same tag that you are also interested, why not push to me also this meeting? It's been performed years over years I call it in the civil world. Why not do it in the business world also? We don't need to invent the wheel. So this is something that should be very, very quickly embraced by content officers and any knowledge repository in the organization. I think it's going to be a great push for that.
Awesome, Yehuda. I love the enthusiasm on this topic. All right, that about wraps us up for this month's session of Beyond the Meeting presented by Meeting Insights. Thank you everyone for joining us. We hope that you found this information valuable. We have this broken up into chapters, so feel free to jump through the different questions. And if you missed January's session of Beyond the Meeting, we'll have that linked down in the description. Feel free to go over there. Again, if you have any questions, feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to answer those questions or use them as a future topic to go through on one of the Beyond the Meeting sessions. We hope to see you next month.
Cheers. Take care, guys.